There's a certain kind of vegetable that earns its keep. You put it in the ground, you give it a bit of water and a bit of attention, and it just keeps handing things back to you, week after week, without asking for much in return. And when you've been gardening long enough, that's really what you start to prize. Not the showpiece, not the tricky prize marrow you fuss over all summer, but the steady, reliable ones that give you the most for the least. The ones that don't punish you for being busy, or for having a knee that doesn't like too much kneeling anymore. So that's the lens I want to use today. Not a beauty contest, not a list of the rarest or the most impressive, just 8 vegetables that, in my experience and by most reasonable measures, give you the best return for your effort, your space, and your patience. Easy to grow, generous with the harvest, genuinely good for you, and worth eating on their own merits. And if you're new to all this, or you're coming back to it after a few years away, I'd gently suggest you don't try to grow all 8 at once. Pick one. We'll come back to that at the end. Let's get into it. The first one is loose leaf lettuce, and I want to be specific about that because there's a difference between a lettuce that forms a tight head, like an iceberg, and one that just makes a loose rosette of leaves you pick from as you go. The heading types make you wait, and they make you commit. The loose leaf and the cut and come again types are far more forgiving. You sow a short row, and instead of waiting for one big harvest, you snip the outer leaves and the plant keeps making more from the center. One sowing can feed you for weeks. It's about the fastest reward in the whole garden, which makes it a wonderful place to start if you want an early win. Now, nutritionally, lettuce isn't a powerhouse, and I won't pretend otherwise. It's mostly water, which is exactly why it's so low in calories. But the darker and greener the leaf, the more it carries in the way of vitamin K, folate, and a bit of vitamin A. So if you're growing your own, lean toward the red and green loose leaf varieties rather than the pale crunchy ones, and you'll get a better leaf and a better plant. It likes cool weather, so sow it in the milder parts of your season, spring and autumn, and give it a little afternoon shade when the heat comes on, or it'll bolt and turn bitter on you. The second one is chard, which you might know as Swiss chard, or Silverbeet depending on where you're from. If lettuce is the sprinter, chard is the marathon runner. This is one of the most forgiving leafy greens you can grow. It shrugs off heat that would send lettuce to seed. It takes a light frost without complaint. And once it's established, it will stand in your garden and keep producing for months, sometimes right through from one season into the next. You pick the outer stalks, the plant keeps pushing up new ones from the middle, and a small handful of plants will keep a household in greens for a very long time. It cooks down like spinach, but holds its texture better, and the stems are good eating in their own right. On the health side, chard is genuinely nutritious, carrying good amounts of vitamin K, vitamin A, and magnesium. I'll add one honest caveat, because I'd rather you hear it from me. Chard is fairly high in oxalates, and if you're someone who's prone to kidney stones, that's worth being aware of and worth a word with your doctor. For most people, it's simply a robust, generous, dependable green, and one I think earns its place easily. Third is zucchini, or summer squash more broadly. Now, this one goes on the list for a single, overwhelming reason, and its productivity. There's an old joke among gardeners that you should lock your car in summer, not to stop anyone getting in, but to stop your neighbors filling the back seat with zucchini they can't use up. And there's truth in it. 1 or 2 healthy plants can produce more than most families know what to do with. So a little goes a long way, and I'd honestly caution you against planting too many. The trick with zucchini is to pick them young and small when they're tender and full of flavor, rather than letting them turn into those enormous watery clubs. Pick often, and the plant keeps producing to replace what you've taken. It wants warm soil and plenty of sun, so it's a plant for the warm part of your season after the frost has well and truly gone. Nutritionally, I'll be straight with you. It's not a superfood, and anyone who tells you it is overselling. It's mostly water, low in calories, with a bit of vitamin C and potassium. What it is a workhorse, and a versatile one, good grated into things, roasted, grilled, or cooked down into a sauce. For sheer weight of harvest per plant, very little beats it. Fourth on the list is bush beans, and I've chosen bush beans specifically over the tall climbing runner types for a reason that matters more as we get older. Climbing beans are productive, no argument, but they need a sturdy frame, and they keep you reaching up and picking overhead. Bush beans stay low and compact. They don't need a trellis, and you can pick them without a stretch or a stepladder. For a lot of us, that's the difference between enjoying a crop and giving up on it. Beans in general are one of the most forgiving things you can grow. They're not fussy about soil. They actually help feed the soil by working with bacteria on their roots to draw nitrogen out of the air, and they crop quickly. Pick them regularly while the pods are young and slim, and the plants keep setting more. On the nutrition, beans are a genuinely good food. They bring fiber, a bit of plant protein, folate and B vitamins to the table, and they're easy to preserve by freezing or drying, which is part of why humans have relied on them for a very, very long time. For a beginner, I'd struggle to name an easier crop that gives you back this much. Number 5 is the cherry tomato. And I've said cherry tomato deliberately, rather than the big beefsteak types, because if you want the flavor of a homegrown tomato with the least heartache, the small fruited varieties are the way in. The large tomatoes are more prone to cracking, to disease, to sulking if the weather turns. The cherry types are tougher. They set fruit more reliably, and they produce in sheer abundance, handful after handful, right through the warm months. And the flavor is the whole point. A tomato you've grown and picked warm off the vine simply doesn't taste like the ones bred for the supermarket shelf, which are chosen to survive shipping rather than to taste of anything. Now, tomatoes are also genuinely good for you, and there's an interesting wrinkle here worth knowing. They contain lycopene, the pigment that makes them red, which is a well-studied antioxidant. And unusually, cooking a tomato actually makes that lycopene easier for your body to absorb, because the heat breaks down the cell walls and frees it up. But here's the part that often gets left out. Lycopene needs a little fat alongside it to actually be absorbed, so a tomato sauce cooked with a splash of olive oil does far more for you than a raw slice on its own. As for the bigger health claims, the links between lycopene and protection against certain diseases are promising, but I'd call them associations rather than anything proven. And I'll leave it there, honestly, rather than overstate it. 6th is the beet, or beetroot. This is a quietly clever plant, because you get 2 crops from the one sowing. There's the root itself, which you can roast or pickle, and then there are the leafy tops, which you can cook and eat, just like the chard we talked about earlier, because they're close relatives. So nothing goes to waste, and that dual purpose is a big part of why it earns its spot. It's an easy grower, happy in cool to mild weather, and it doesn't demand rich soil. On the health side, I want to steer you toward the claim that actually holds up. You'll hear beets called a superfood, and you'll hear big talk about them. The strongest evidence is around something specific. Beets are rich in natural nitrates, and your body converts those into a compound that relaxes and widens your blood vessels, which can modestly lower blood pressure. That effect is real, and it's been measured in proper trials. But I want to be measured about it too, because from a single serving the effect is small and it doesn't last very long. It's a nice thing that a food can do, not a substitute for anything your doctor has you on. Grow beets because they're easy, versatile, and give you 2 harvests in one. The blood pressure business is a pleasant bonus, not a headline. Number 7 is the carrot, and I'll admit this one takes a little more patience than the others, which is exactly why it belongs on a list about reward for effort. Carrots are slow to germinate, and they like to be left alone, but they have a very wide temperature range, they store well, and a short row gives you a surprising amount of dense, sweet food. The key to a good carrot is loose, stone-free soil, because if the root hits an obstacle, it forks and twists. So if your ground is heavy, sow a shorter, rounder variety, or grow them in a deep container of loose mix, and you'll do far better. Now, I have to address the eyesight thing, because you've all heard it. The idea that eating carrots gives you sharp night vision is, I'm sorry to say, mostly a myth, and it has a genuinely fascinating true origin. During the Second World War, the British put out the story that their fighter pilots could see so well in the dark because they ate lots of carrots. It wasn't true. They were hiding the fact that they'd developed radar, and the carrot story was cover. What is true is more modest. Carrots are rich in a pigment your body turns into vitamin A, and vitamin A is genuinely essential for healthy vision, particularly in low light. If someone is deficient, correcting that will help their sight. but eating carrots beyond what you need won't give you better than normal eyesight. It's a good, honest food that supports something important. It just isn't magic. And the eighth, the one that rounds it all off, is the potato. Now, the potato has a bit of an image problem, and I think that's unfair. Yes, it's a starchy crop, but the starch is the good, complex kind, and the plant itself is remarkably generous. You plant a potato, or a piece of one with an eye on it, and a few months later you dig up many times what you put in. There are few things in gardening as satisfying as turning over the soil and finding a hidden crop you'd almost forgotten was down there. They store for a long time, which makes them a real staple rather than a treat, and there's genuine food security in that. On the nutrition, the potato deserves better than its reputation. Eaten with the skin on, it brings fiber, vitamin C, vitamin B6, and, here's one that surprises people, more potassium than a banana, provided you keep that skin. The trouble with the potato was never really the potato. It's what we tend to do to it. The deep frying, the loading up with fat, the vegetable underneath all that is a good one. I'll give you one safety note, because it matters. If a potato turns green under the skin, or sprouts heavily, that green part contains a natural compound you don't want much of. Cut it well away, and if it's badly green throughout, don't eat it. Stored somewhere cool and dark, they'll keep beautifully and stay pale. So there they are, 8 vegetables that, to my mind, give you the most bang for the least fuss. Loose leaf lettuce and chard for your greens, one quick and one that runs and runs, zucchini for sheer weight of harvest, bush beans for an easy forgiving crop you can pick without stooping, cherry tomatoes for flavor you simply can't buy, beets for 2 harvests in one, carrots for the patient reward, and the potato to round out a meal and fill the store. And now that promise I made at the start. Please don't feel you have to grow all of these this season. That's the fastest way to feel overwhelmed and to let the weeds win. If you take one thing from me today, let it be this. Pick a single one this week and just start it. If you want the surest early success, I'd point you at the loose leaf lettuce or the chard, because they're quick, they're cheap, and they forgive almost everything a beginner might get wrong. Get one small win under your belt, and the rest tends to follow on its own. That's what I've got for you today. If it was useful, you know what to do, and I always like reading what you'd add or swap out, so tell me down below which vegetable you think earns its keep the most. I'll see you next time.